Welcome to Paladin Financial Talk. I am your host today, Ellie Robinson, with our guest host, Tony Shore.
Yep.
Hi,
More of a
Tony.
co-host,
Co-host.
guest host. I'm not doing much hosting, just co-hosting,
Okay.
along for the ride.
Our listeners know your voice, though, Tony.
Yeah,
You're
I hope
regular.
so. Yeah, I hope so. That's good.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on your show,
Of
Ellie.
course.
It's awesome to be here.
I love
Seriously.
having you with us.
Oh, yeah, it's fun.
Mhm.
It's fun. So, what are we going to talk about on the show today?
Good question. Today, we're going to talk about something that millions go through every single year, and it's changing jobs.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So maybe you're itching for a new opportunity, or maybe you just can't take one more pizza party from your old boss. People are changing jobs all day, every day. But with new job changes come a big question, which is what should you do with your old 401k? So that is something that we tackle very frequently here at Paladin. And so I wanted to talk about it a little bit more today.
I think that sounds great, except you say pizza party like it's a negative thing.
It's not a negative thing, but it can be redundant sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, that's all work's gonna do for me is like
I don't mean it like
three
that.
or four times a year. There's never anything wrong with a pizza party to me. I love
Honestly,
pizza.
on a Friday, sometimes it hits the spot and you're
It
like,
does.
yeah, I deserve this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, people either leave jobs for one reason or another, maybe to go to another one. But maybe they get laid off or they quit. Things happen. But what do you do with your old 401k, right? That's the question you're going to answer for us
I
today.
mean, when it comes down to it, the average person will change careers, so not just jobs, but careers 5 to 7 times in their working life.
Wow. Yeah.
So people are jumping a lot. Approximately 30% of the total workforce will change jobs every 12 months.
That's
So there's
crazy.
people who are constantly jumping.
Yeah.
According to recent data, approximately 1 in 5 Americans will forget that they have a 401k or have an inactive 401k hanging out there. So that's why it becomes
not good.
It's not great.
No.
So there's an estimated $1.65 trillion, Tony, left behind in these old plans due to job changes, and the average balance of such accounts is around $55,400, which is highlighting the significant amount of unmanaged retirement funds that are just left with previous employers, and it's something that we need to address.
Wow. Well, I have to, in full disclosure, I'm raising my hand. I had this happen to me. I worked at a company for 5 years and it got bought out. I kept doing the same job, but we moved over into a bigger building, got bought out by a much bigger company. And when we went over there, we filled out new benefit paperwork, got new benefits, filled it all out. And I just went on doing my same job, but for this other company. Well, I worked there 5 years. And after that 5 years, I left to come here to be a co-host for Gradient and to work with the fine folks at Paladin. But I forgot all about that first company. I assumed that they just transferred it, that it went with me to the new company because really it was just a new name and we rolled into this bigger company. Well, no, that's not how it works. Even if your company gets bought out, I was supposed to fill out a form. They said they emailed it, but we know what happens to emails. I had a boss once. I had a marketing boss once that told me, if you want to make sure somebody doesn't read something, email it to them. And I'm like, wait, that's the whole purpose. But I must have missed it. And so when I went to move my 401k over here, where I'm at now, I'm like, this amount can't be right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know I've got more.
Yeah.
You know, I see my statements. I think I have 2 accounts. And where's the other one? So I had to do some digging. I had to call the owner of the old company and say, what company were we with?
You had to hunt it down.
Then I had to dig through boxes of old receipts till I found a statement from them from years earlier.
Oh my goodness,
like
Tony.
6 years had went by, 5 or 6. And so luckily I found it. Got it transferred over, but I momentarily forgot about an account, and it had 5 years with the company match. It had a decent amount.
Nice.
So, and I hear about people forgetting about 401ks.
And it's unfortunate that like HR is not gonna typically help you with that. They don't
No.
care.
Nope.
It's 100% up to you on what to do with your plan. So, option number one, like we had just kind of mentioned right now, is just letting it sit there and forgetting about it. That technically could be considered an option. It's just not ideal.
Because you're no longer able to contribute to it if you're no longer at the company.
Exactly. That is the number one biggest reason, is you can no longer contribute to them when they're inactive, and your old employer, they could charge higher fees with inactive plans like that if you're no longer with the company. So most people don't realize all the hidden fees within your 401ks. They do not make it clear or transparent. There's usually fees associated with active 401ks that you can't really like get around anyway.
Right.
But that is something that most people don't know about inactive ones. They just sit there and kind of charge you for letting them.
Yeah, and there's
hold your
fees
money.
inside there that you don't realize that you're losing money instead of gaining on that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, I mean, the whole principle of just leaving, a bunch of accounts out there is just giving you, more opportunity to make mistakes on your investment funds.
Or double up on investments, like where, you want to be more diverse. You think you're diversified, but you have all these different accounts that are all invested in the same things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's just not making sense, and they're not working together. So, yeah, technically you could leave your old 401k there, but that's probably the worst thing that you could actually
do. So that's
do with
option one. Just when you leave a company, you can leave your old 401k.
Technically, yes. Just not ideal for us to do that.
Right.
So that is option one.
So what are other options? I mean, are there better options?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say option number two, which is also not ideal, but you could technically do it, is cash it out. You could technically cash it out if you really wanted to do it. This is why it's not ideal, though, is if you are under 59 and a half and you cash it out, there will be a 10% penalty. That is an early withdrawal penalty is what it's called. Plus, if the entire 401k is all pre-tax money, then the distribution will be all taxable to you. So let's assume that you have $50,000 in an old 401k and you're like, well, I have plenty of money elsewhere. I want to cash this out and go on vacation or XYZ.
Not a good idea.
Well, yeah, if you break down the math, a $50,000 distribution, let's assume that you are in the 24% federal marginal tax bracket, and let's say that you're paying 7% income taxes on the state level, just like Minnesota, just about. So of that $50,000, 12,000 of it would go to federal taxes, and then 3,500 would go to state, assuming those hypothetical marginal tax brackets, and then 10% of that original 50,000 would be penalized, and that would go out to the IRS.
Oh my gosh, you'd lose more than a third.
So that is 5,000, and you'd be left with $29,500.
Oh,
at the end of the distribution. So
just
much
above half is all you'd end up with from 50 grand. That's terrible.
Exactly. And there's people who do it though, and I think they don't really understand the repercussions of
that's horrible
of doing that. So
money you put into a retirement account like a 401k or an IRA, that's for retirement.
Correct.
Or 403b or TSP. That money has to be for retirement.
Correct.
And so you can't touch that money until you retire. Really, you shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, cashing out your retirement savings is going against our whole theory of why we want to retire for the long time horizon. You don't allow it to compound. You don't allow it to grow with the market over the next 30, 40 years, and you're losing that in the long run.
Yeah.
So technically it's an option. I wanted to just clarify that's out there, but also not recommended.
Yeah. So option 1 and 2, not the greatest. The first is leave it. You lose out on a lot there. Cash it out, which I know any financial advisor worth their salt would tell you please don't do that.
If I found a client who did that under my roof, I'd be like, absolutely not. I should have taught you better. Yes.
Yeah. So what are some better options?
Yeah, that's a good question. So option number 3, and I feel like this is the most ideal, is rolling out your 401k into an IRA. Okay, so which gives you more flexibility all around. With an IRA, you'll be able to control over how you can invest those funds. As many people notice within their 401ks, you have usually on average 20 different mutual funds to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very vast. So with IRAs, you will have thousands of options ultimately. That includes stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs that can diversify you into alternative investments, including precious metals and real estate. And there are certain IRAs. I think this is notable to talk about, even though we don't really exercise this, but there are certain IRAs that even allow you to invest in much broader array of alternative investments like commodities and limited partnerships and tax lien certificates and real estate properties even. So
Sure.
those are usually for the more sophisticated investors and usually not, a good fit for the average pre-retiree. But like, I think it's good for people to know the whole scope of just knowing that that's
There
out
are
there.
options, and that's what I love about what you and the two Jeffs and everyone at Paladin
Yes.
Financial, the advisors there, Ellie, and what you do is you look at all the available options and say, okay, this is best for you in this particular situation.
Correct. And Paladin really handholds our clients when we're doing that rollover process to make sure it's done correctly. When you do a rollover, there's a couple different ways you can do it. There's direct rollovers and there's indirect rollovers. If you do it incorrectly, you can accidentally create a taxable distribution for yourself and then be penalized. So that's something that we absolutely handhold our clients on and making sure it's done correctly. And just having your retirement savings in an IRA will just, it'll give you more flexibility on a tax planning perspective too, on, considering Roth conversions, if that's good for your plan. So like we're taking a look at all things from all angles, and usually from a tax planning perspective, it gives you more flexibility too.
Yeah, so it sounds like that's one of the better options is rolling it over, doing a direct rollover into an IRA. And IRAs over your 401k gives you more control, right?
Absolutely.
And on how it's invested, what you put it in. And you said there's lots of different options there. So is that it? Or are there other options?
I mean, last option is you could roll it over into your new 401k. So you leave a job and you started a new job and you have a new 401k there. You could technically take your old 401k and roll it over into that new plan. Usually I feel like that's going to be best for people who aren't ready to work with a financial professional, or a financial planner, or if they just don't want to manage their IRA themselves, which there's going to be some starter people who are like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And
I'm they shouldn't.
I
think you either work with a financial professional and get them to set that IRA up and help you invest it, or you roll it into a 401k. Doing it yourself is
it's a full-time job.
Yeah,
I'd say it's a full-time job.
Yeah, you have a whole staff of people to do it, and then a back-end office. You work with, I know, investment firms that have active portfolio managers working on
I'm
strategies.
helping my clients retire every single day, and the portfolio managers are trading stocks every single day. Like we have our individual full-time jobs, and if arguably we're working more than 40 hours a week. Like this is day in and day out. But I mean, if for those people who think that, rolling it over into their new 401k is just going to be an easy set it and forget it, like at least you have your retirement funds in one place.
And if it's a smaller amount, maybe it doesn't matter.
At least it's in one place. At least you don't have a bunch of accounts hanging out there.
Because I've done that before. I've used that option where I've rolled from one company into the next because I wasn't at a point where, I didn't have 100 or 250,000 saved up. At that point, to roll it over into another 401k, I think you'd be you're at the level, if you're over 100,000 or 250,000 in that range, and you're not working with a financial professional, you could make costly mistakes that could cost you your retirement.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if we do have people who come to us and start working with us and they have, active 401ks that we can't really manage quite yet, they're under 59 and a half and they have, a sizable amount in there, we will do as much as possible to make sure that it's allocated correctly until they hit that magical age of 59 and a half where we can roll it over, which that is an IRS rule because of your 401ks having such limited investment options. They know that as you're gearing up for retirement, you need to start allocating it more appropriately for the intention of retiring soon.
Yep.
So that is the whole reason why they have that rule in the first place.
Right. We don't know why the half year is in there, though.
I don't know why it's
aggravating.
Yeah, that is a little random.
The IRS had to complicate it. They can. You know what happened? It's classic government. They had it was either 59 or 60, and they couldn't agree.
So they met in the middle.
So they go, we'll make it a half year, but we don't celebrate half year birth. We
No,
don't
we
have
don't.
a half year
Maybe we should
birthday.
go back to that though, Tony.
Only,
Remember when you're a little kid and
yeah,
you're like, I'm
yeah,
6.5
5.
years old?
Yeah, when you're 5, you have half birthdays.
Yeah.
But by the time you reach 7 or 8, those are done.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Until you get to the IRS, then we start having half years again.
Correct. You start celebrating those
Yeah,
milestones.
That's crazy. I always bring that up because it's really something. So the key takeaway here is don't leave your old 401k behind. I'm taking
Correct.
and be careful when you roll it over that you're doing it correctly. I mean, it's your hard-earned money, and you should consult a financial advisor, a financial
Absolutely.
services professional like yourself, Ellie, and your great team there that you have at Paladin. I think that's awesome. So before we go, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you to set up a consultation, and you'll look at what they have in their 401k and in their other retirement accounts if they have any, and say, okay, you're allocated well. Let's come up with a plan
Absolutely.
that's going to grow this money and put you in the best situation possible.
I mean, I think the easiest is to just call our office. Don't be shy. So give us a call at 651-842-8406. But we also have a email address, info@paladinfinancial.com, where I usually encourage our clients to send over topics that you want to learn more about and hear from on any of the advisors here at the office. And we're more than happy to dive into that topic.
Awesome. Well, Ellie, great show today. I love the topic because it's one that affects so many of our listeners.
Everybody.
Out there. I mean,
everybody.
Pretty much everyone has a 401k if you're working full time out of school and working full time. You have at least access to a 401k or similar retirement account. And knowing what to do with that when you change jobs, because like you said, the stats are amazing.
Mhm.
They really are. Well, listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Paladin Financial Talk with Ellie Robinson.
Thanks, Tony.
I said your name wrong.
That's okay. It's so normal. Everyone. Easy though.
Yes. Why didn't it end?
Oh.